Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, the climate guy setting the record straight about climate. In this video, I discuss 30 years of fake climate news. The summer of 1988 was very hot in the United States. There was a terrible drought that summer and the Mississippi River nearly dried up. About one-third of Yellowstone National Park burned up in massive forest fires. Climate alarmists took full advantage of the hot weather and did everything they could to conflate weather with climate. On June 23, 1988, the world's #1 climate alarmist, James Hansen, testified before Congress. It was the hottest June 23rd on record in Washington, D.C., and Hansen and Senator Tim Wirth from Colorado went into the hearing room the night before and sabotaged the air conditioning system. Their goal was to make sure that people in the room were unable to distinguish between a compromised air conditioning system and the Earth's climate. And their showmanship worked perfectly. The press immediately picked up on their global warming scam. 2 weeks later, Newsweek magazine ran this for their lead story: "The Greenhouse Effect. Danger. More hot summers ahead." They showed a family sweating profusely in a hot glass dome. This dome represented the 0.00005 mole fraction increase in carbon dioxide since the beginning of the 20th century. The increase in carbon dioxide since the beginning of the 20th century was equivalent to packing an extra 5 people into Michigan Stadium. An extra 5 people in Michigan Stadium doesn't sound like very much, but the visual imagery of the glass dome was very effective. It fooled a lot of people, including myself. So far it sounds pretty ridiculous. Let's look now at how their forecast turned out. This graph shows the average summer maximum temperature at all of NOAA's United States Historical Climatology Network stations. As you can see, summer maximum temperatures in the United States have been declining sharply for a century. They peaked in the 1930s, and the summer of 1988 was the last hot summer the United States had. Let's look at another metric, the frequency of really hot days. This graph shows the average percent of summer days over 90 degrees at all NOAA United States Historical Climatology Network stations. Once again, we see the same pattern. Over the past century, the frequency of hot days has plummeted, and 1988 was the last hot summer the United States had. Let's look now at the pattern for 95-degree days. Once again, we see the same pattern. The frequency of hot days has plummeted over the last century. The 1930s was the hottest, the 1950s were very hot, and 1988 was the last really hot summer in the United States. If we look at 100-degree days, the story changes slightly. Once again, we have this long-term trend of declining heat in the United States, with the 1930s extremely hot. But when we look at 100-degree days, 1988 wasn't particularly hot. The last really hot summer was 1980. Newsweek's July 11, 1988 forecast of the greenhouse effect producing more hot summer days was completely wrong. The exact opposite has occurred. And their portrayal of this tiny increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide being a glass dome was just silly. So now let's look at how NASA and NOAA dealt with these failed forecasts. This graph shows NOAA's actual measured U.S. temperatures in blue and what they report to the public in red. Rather than adjusting their failed theories to match the data, NOAA and NASA adjust the data to match their failed theories. They massively cool the past to make it look like a cooling United States is actually warming. In 1988, they had me and lots of other people fooled. And I stayed fooled until about 10 years ago when I actually looked at the data for myself. Whatever these people are doing, it has nothing to do with science. In fact, it's all about politics. Just 13 years earlier, Newsweek was pushing the global cooling scam. In their April 28, 1975 issue, Newsweek warned of the cooling world. They called this science. They said, There are ominous signs that the Earth's weather patterns have begun to change dramatically, and that these changes may portend a drastic decline in food production with serious political implications for just about every nation on Earth. So they were given exactly the same warnings in 1975 as they were in 1988, only they were talking about global cooling instead of global warming. Climate change is the biggest scam in science history. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.